What's going on, everybody? It's Joel here, and today we're going to be talking about my first impressions with the Puma Fuse 3. Alright, so the Puma Fuse is still a relatively new face in the CrossFit shoe spectrum. The original ones came out very early in 2021. About a year and a half later, the 2s came out in August of 2022, and it is now the very beginning of 2024, and we just got the Puma Fuse 3s last week, the week that was the start of Wadapalooza. I've had these shoes in my possession for all of about a day and a half. I did my workout in them last night. But I'm gonna refrain from talking too much about like the performance of these shoes because it has only been one day. I really have no real workout experience with these shoes. Today we're gonna be focused on my first impressions with them, how they fit, and the differences between these and the previous model, which is the Puma Fuse 2. I don't actually have the ones with me. They're probably buried away somewhere at the gym. But I think the 2s are probably gonna be the more fair comparison. So I'm gonna assume that the 3s use all new tooling, though it's kind of hard to tell because I think a lot of the same design language carried itself over from the 2s to the 3s. There's some similarities, but there's also a good amount of differences. So the first difference that you're gonna notice is the materials. They're very different. So you had a kind of standard mesh on the 2s. On the 3s, you have a mesh that kind of resembles the Metcon React Turbos mesh. And it's very lightweight feeling, it's flexible. The shoe has a booty design, so it is gusseted on the sides, and then there's a layer of, I wanna say fabric under that mesh to keep your feet comfortable. On top of that mesh, there are overlays for some targeted support, mainly at the toe bumper, which is a little bit on the thicker side, around the metatarsals, around the eye stays, which are kind of like the toe bumper. They're a little bit on the thicker side. And then you have the inclusion of the power tape, and that is in the medial side of the shoe around kind of where your metatarsals are. That was something I first saw on the power frame training shoes. Those were not like CrossFit shoes or anything like that, but I think, you know, when it comes to like structure in a shoe, it's pretty universal for training. So I'm gonna put the 2s down. Well, actually, you know what? Let's keep the 2s up. So on the lateral side, you'll see that the biggest difference here is now the Puma logo is facing the correct direction. It is not backwards anymore. And I know a lot of people are gonna like that. People have complained about that all the time with the 2s. But that overlay is a little bit on the thicker side. It's got some piping around the logo. Has a nice clean look to it. And I think that functionally, that part is gonna hold your foot in place a lot better and not let it spill over to the side. So coming around to the back part of the shoe, we have a nice gigantic heel clip. So this actually protrudes out over the outsole and over, I guess, I don't want to call that the midsole, but over the outsole part of the shoe. So that should help you go up the wall for handstand push-ups. I have not tried these. It has a very flat and angular design at the back part of the shoe. So it probably will help to some degree, but I can't really comment until I actually use them. So another thing that part is there for is to stabilize the heel portion of the shoe, which is crucial on something like this that has a drop-in midsole design. The ankle collar on this shoe is nice and padded, and it does not have any heel slip. When I was using these shoes yesterday, I did not notice that, and I was doing sled pushes. The tongue is still a little bit on the anemic side. Some people are gonna like that. Some people aren't. I think that it is okay. At least it's gusseted. There's some cushion there, but it's like on the thinner side. The laces don't really have anything to complain about. They're just really standard normal laces. And then the lacing system also nothing too crazy. But I will say that while I thought it was a little weird that the laces were offset to the lateral side of the shoe, I now see why you would want that in this style of shoe. Because it actually relaxes the amount of pressure that is put on the big toe. So it doesn't make your big toe want to push in. I don't want to say that these are totally wide shoes, but that makes it a lot more wearable because of that part of the shoe. So they don't feel like they're crushing your toes or anything. Now going back to the outsole of the shoe, it has a newly redesigned Puma grip outsole. It says Fuse Flex, and that is a multi-directional outsole at the forefoot of the shoe that can expand and contract to give you more grip on the ground. And then right at the very toe, there's even more, I guess, teeth to grab the ground when you are doing burpees, doing sled pushes. And the mid part of the shoe, there is another, I guess, separated outsole piece. So you have the forefoot that is one part of the outsole, and then you have the midfoot, which feels like a more heavy-duty rubber material. That midfoot has, of course, your raised sidewalls on both sides, and that has teeth on it to give you traction up the rope, give you a little bit of rope protection. Another thing that I saw right here is that there's this little logo that's a shield, and it has a rope that goes through it. So I'm assuming that this guy right here, or this overlay, is supposed to protect against rope abrasion, keep your shoes looking nice for longer periods of time. I can't say, haven't done a rope climb in these shoes. Well, one thing that stands out about the shoe to me is the heel geometry. It is very similar to the Romaleo 5, which has a very stable heel. So you've got extended contact points because it's so angular at the heel, and it really makes you feel planted when you're on the ground. At least it did on the Romaleos, and with the short time that I've been using these shoes, it feels like the heel on these shoes is very planted. Okay, now let's take a look at a design that has carried itself over from the first and seconds and other notable CrossFit shoes, such as the Nike Metcon, and that is the drop-in midsole design. So this year we have a dual density drop-in midsole. It seems to be a little bit thicker than it has been in the previous years, and let's kind of confirm that by just getting the other ones out. Okay, so here we go, and looking at the two, they're probably about the same thickness. I don't really see them being too thick. Maybe a little teeny tiny bit thicker this year, but it could also be because they are white, and usually things will look a little bit slimmer if they're black compared to if they're white. The density of them feels pretty similar at the forefoot, and then the heel on the threes is a different density foam. So you've got a dual density drop-in midsole, and this honestly looks like something that you could just swap between both of your shoes if you had the Fuse 2, which I'm going to try to do right now, and it should fit just fine. Fits perfectly in the Fuse 2s. And then we'll put the 2s in the Fuse 3. So that's a nice bonus if you are a Fuse fan. It's a shoe that you've been using for the past few years. If you wanted a softer feel at the heel, then you can just swap in the Fuse 2 drop-in midsole, or vice versa. You wanted to put in the Fuse 3s into the Fuse 2s, you could do that as well. So when it comes to the drop of this shoe, I'm gonna just assume that it's a 4mm drop. The 1s and 2s had a 4mm drop, so I don't know why they would change it for the 3s, especially looking at the drop-in midsoles, it looks the same to me. Now, the big thing that I noticed very early, right when I pulled these shoes out of the box, was the increased weight, and it is not good. So the Fuses before were never the best when it came to being lightweight. The 3s in a size 10.5 are 15.4 ounces. That is the heaviest by a long shot training shoe that I have ever used. Heavier even than the bricks that were the Nano X Fronings, which were previously the heaviest shoe. Now, I will say that even like with the Nano X Fronings, the Fuse does a good job in hiding the weight because of how flexible the shoe is. Even though it's not as flexible as the past two shoes, it's still fairly flexible. So I think that if you were using these shoes for like in the box stuff, they'll probably be okay, but I would just not even bother running in these shoes just because how heavy they are. Okay, now talking about how these shoes fit. They say on the website that these have a new last that are wider, and I will say that they are wider than either of the previous two shoes. The toe box volume is definitely increased over those two. But I'm not going to say that these are wide shoes by any stretch of the word. They still kind of feel more, I want to say, on the normal side. So they're not narrow, they're not wide, they're just somewhere in the middle. And I think the majority of people should have a okay fit with these shoes. If you have a really wide and boxy foot, then I'd kind of err on the side of caution. But if you're just on the wider spectrum of feet, then it's probably not going to be that big a deal to fit inside a pair of the Fuse 3s. Like I said before, having the offset laces does decrease the amount of pressure that is on the big toe, especially at the metatarsal area. So I still feel like my toes are able to splay just fine in these shoes. The midfoot of this shoe, there's no real arch. It's a neutral feeling shoe. So I think, yeah, for the majority of people, they're going to fit fine. The way that I sized these was the same as all of my other Puma Fuse. I got these in a size 10.5 and they fit me pretty much spot on compared to my 2s. My 1s were still even a little tight in the 10.5 because that toe box volume, it was just more flat. But in the 2s and the 3s, I'd say the fit is pretty similar. So if that's what you're coming from, I just recommend sizing the same. If you're coming from a Nike shoe, it's going to be the same sizing with these. If you're coming from Strike, Red, or your tiers, they're all going to be the same size as these. The only shoe that you might have to size up, half a size, is Nanos. So if you use your Nanos in a different size than your Nikes, you size those down. I do. Then you're going to have to go up half a size to the Puma Fuse. All right, so now touching on how I feel like it's going to be to train in these shoes. Like I said, they are extremely heavy. It's noticeable. You have these shoes on. They do definitely feel heavy on your feet as much as they feel heavy in your hands. And while they're definitely not going to be the greatest of running shoes, that's for sure. 15 ounces, that is heavy for a training shoe. That is like massive when you're talking about running shoes. So while I don't think anyone's planning to run like miles in these shoes, if you have the odd 200, 400, 100 meter run in a workout, then I think that these are going to be okay. They're going to be usable. I think for burpees, they're going to be okay. Like your body weight movements, double unders, and box jumps, they're probably going to be okay. But when it comes to running, these things are going to be like bricks. When it comes to lifting, I thought that these were really good, actually. So that's something that I've never really cared for with the Puma Fuses. They just have always had this like flimsy feel to them, not really a substantial feeling shoe, despite being, you know, a little bit on the heavier side, which is really weird. It's a really weird feeling. But with these, I actually want to use a barbell. I want to do Olympic weightlifting. I want to do powerlifting in these shoes just to see how they feel. I think they have a way more stable feel than either of the previous two models, which kind of wanted to like twist and bend and do all these crazy things. Whereas these ones, they feel stable where they need to be and they feel flexible where they need to be. I did some power cleans yesterday, and usually cleaning up to 225 like makes me a little nervous. I didn't really have that feeling when I had these shoes on yesterday. I knew that the bar was going to go up. I knew I was going to catch it fine, and these shoes were going to be stable. The grip on these shoes was another thing that really kind of stood out to me. Doing sled pushes in these shoes, because getting any kind of traction on the rubber mats in a gym while pushing a sled, that's a hard thing to do. That's a hard thing for any shoe. So this shoe at least hooked up good enough for me to not want to take off my shoes and throw them across the room. The price of these went up to $120, but that's still a relatively cheap CrossFit shoe. CrossFit shoes are trending in the wrong direction. We have like the normal price is like 150 bucks now. These started at 100 bucks. They've gone up $10 each year. Hopefully they kind of slow down there, but these ones retail at $120, and they are available right now. I think for $120, it's a fair bargain. you have to know that these are gonna weigh a lot. So if you're somebody that doesn't like heavy shoes, this is not gonna be the shoe for you. I don't think it's gonna really change your mind, even with the amount of flexibility that the shoe has. But a full review on these shoes is gonna be coming soon. So stay tuned, make sure that you subscribe to my channel so that you catch all the latest updates. And make sure that you follow me on Instagram so that you see all the clips of me working out and testing the Puma Fuse. If you guys have any questions about these shoes, feel free to leave them in the comment section. And as always, guys, please hit that like button, subscribe, and thanks for watching.